Hey, it's Kari Jo.
Hey, it's Anna. Join us as we learn new things, challenge our assumptions, and grow as people. Welcome to the Heretical Hippies podcast.
In this season, we are going to explore the intersection of curiosity and wonder, and hopefully develop some fresh ways to see the world and ourselves. So come along for the ride, or don't. Either way, we're going to hit record. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of Heretical Hippies. I'm Kari Jo, here as always with my co-host Anna.
Hello, everyone.
And we are interviewing a really special guest today. I'm super excited because honestly, as close as I am to this person, we've basically shared our stories like in little blips of time on voice messages through Instagram. So it'll be really awesome to have a full conversation, a good back and forth. So everyone, please welcome my sister-in-law, Abby. Welcome, Abby.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super pumped to hear what you have to share. So we're just gonna get right into it, as we always do. Abby, we like to ask everyone a similar question to open things up. We would love to hear like a 5-cent tour of who is Abby Shephard.
Oh, okay. I'm a mom, 3 boys, 22, and then the younger 2 have birthdays this month, so they're gonna be 20 and 17, which is insane to me. Wife, musician, former church lady, turned health coach. I love long walks on the beach and digging my toes in the sand. That's me.
That's awesome. So give us a little, like, obviously we talk about deconstruction a lot on this podcast, and we're here to hear that part of your journey. And so give us a little kind of preamble backstory of your spiritual upbringing, and then, into your adult years. Once you leave the house, things obviously change for people spiritually. They kind of claim their own faith and that. And then bring us up to speed to where you are today. I realize that's a really loaded question, and it might take a lot to get to the end of that, so that's fine, just take your time, and we'll probably interject with questions here and there.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so like so many people in the Western world, right? I was born and raised in the church, did Sunday school. My grandpa was my Sunday school teacher, did bell choir, did all the choirs growing up, did youth group. Um, and then college came and, I was looking for that church home. And so my roommate and I, looked for a church on campus because we didn't have cars. And so there was a Methodist church on campus, brought up Methodist. And so we went and they were speaking in tongues. So we left immediately. um, that was not it
At
for
a
us.
Methodist church?
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
shocking
Yes.
to me.
Yeah, me too. We looked at each other, we were like, "No," and we left. We never went back, and then we found his house, Christian Fellowship, and so we joined that, and we just did, like, private, like, little Bible studies throughout, and then, I met Matthew and my husband, and he was also brought up Methodist, so that was kind of a good little moment there for us. And so then when we got engaged, we wanted to find, our home church. So we found a Methodist church in Mount Pleasant and we joined the choir there while we were still in college. Oh my gosh, I'm making me sound like a weenie. But we
Well, you're in the company of fellow former weenies, so we're good.
but yeah, we joined the choir there, which was actually kind of cute because we were both, music majors and some of our music professors were in the choir, so we were singing with our music professors at church. We got married there, and then when we moved, got our own house and stuff, we found another church in Midland, and that was kind of our church home for, over 20 years. And we did all the things. I volunteered and taught Sunday school. I we were both the youth group leaders for a while, and then life got busy. So we stopped that, but then eventually I was hired on as a children's choir director because I have that degree in music. And then eventually I was hired on as the kids min director, so the director of children's ministries. And I did that for 8 years. So my life now looks like I don't go to church.
Mm.
There was a lot of stuff, like, when I started working at the church that kind of, like, I know I watch your or listen to your podcast, so you always say that pull that thread. There were a lot of little threads that I pulled while working at the church that kind of, like, led me to once I left that position, it kinda gave me that permission to keep pulling those threads and, really learning more about myself and allowing myself to be myself without the stigma of having to stay in that church box. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell right now.
That's great. That actually gives us, like, a really good foundation to work from and ask questions about, because I think I have one specific question about, like, pulling that thread, right? Do you remember, was there, like, a specific experience, a specific belief that you were questioning? Or, like, we call it kinda like the first domino, or the pull of the thread. Do you remember, was it something specific, or was it maybe a conglomeration of several things? Like, give us a little insight into how that looked.
Yeah, there were like, I would say 2 or 3 major threads. So the first would be like, as the children's ministries director, like I was in charge of all curriculum for grades, pre-K, well, infants through 5th grade. And so in that, I was, purchasing curriculum from companies, but also if I didn't like it, I would write my own. And in that, like I did a lot of research. And the more I researched and the more I was like thinking about what I was teaching these kids, I kept thinking, what the heck am I saying to these people? Like, what am I teaching them? Why? So the more I taught, the more I questioned and the more I researched. I listened to podcasts and I read books and I just kind of really dug into the history of things. So that was like the first major thread. Um, and then the other big juicy thread, is that a thing? Juicy thread? The other big thread, um, was COVID times because I was there during COVID, and it was the leadership staff all got together to discuss whether or not it was safe to bring people back into the building, um, and at one point, one of my coworkers at the time said, um, "Our job as the church," I will never forget this. "Our job as the church is not to care for the congregation or the people." And everybody just kinda went, "Yeah." But I sat there and I went, "What? Our job as the church is not to care for the people?" So then I kind of was like, I was sitting there in shock, and I spoke up and I said, I love you to bits," to this person who said that, "but I think the job of the church is solely that, to care for the people." And I said, "If we're not caring for the people, then what are we doing here? Like, what is the point of all of this?"
Did they have a reason, like, what their actual purpose was beyond not caring for the people?
Uh, to get the butts in the pews.
To get the coins in the collection plate.
It was they just wanted people to come back into the building. They felt that people were, and obviously, sure, people were so drained and so the depression, right? And they wanted people to come back into the building. But I was like, that's not the point of church. To me, the point of church is to care for the people. I was obviously not taken seriously. So, they brought the people back into the building, but I kind of stood my ground and I didn't bring my kids and the kids, I didn't bring them back into the building. I kept doing my online kids worship services with the kids because I didn't want them back in the building. I wanted them to stay safe and to stay healthy. So, I that wasn't looked upon with great grace, but it was my choice. So those were like the 2 big things where I was just like, "What?
Mm,
What? What the hell are we doing here then?"
yeah, so what okay, after I agree, COVID for me was actually a really big catalyst too, for me to just basically reevaluate what the evangelical culture was and what they were standing for or not standing for, and so, yeah, that was an interesting, probably one of the larger dominoes for me as well. Okay, so after you're kind of scratching your head going, "What am I doing here then if that's not what our goal is?" Did you feel like a sort of freedom to start looking more deeply into things, or tell us a bit more about that journey, because I know for some people there's little blips of questions, like something happens and you're like, I don't know if I agree with that, but then you just kind of shelve it, you know? Was that the instigator for you to really start looking into things, or what led you to that place where you felt free to actually consider questioning things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that was, like, just kind of pulling all of those threads, like the questioning what I was teaching, combined with some of those statements that were not uncommon in the church that I worked at. Yeah, I just felt that freedom to say, "Why can't I question?" Instead of, like, blindly reading and blindly following, why can't I question? And it kinda gave me that sense of freedom.
Yeah. So, okay, I know parts of your story of working at this church, which will remain nameless because we're not trying to like throw anybody under the bus. This is never the purpose of our podcast. But we do find it to be helpful to shine light on things that might be a common experience, but people aren't talking about very much. I would love to hear anything you're willing to share with us about that work environment you found yourself in. I mean, you've already alluded to some like really weird attitudes about their jobs. Um, Fill us in a little bit more on as your eyes are opened to questioning things that you noticed that you maybe finally recognized after. I mean, we gaslight ourselves all the time, right? You were probably gaslighting yourself, "Oh, it's fine, like, no, they mean well," like, right? We make all these excuses. Fill us in a little bit more, like, flesh out that work environment, and then ultimately to you leaving that position. You've got
Oh,
3 hours, so go for it.
I was just gonna say, how much time do you have?
Make it your
Yeah,
therapy session.
it's gonna all come out, friends. Um, yeah, there were so many little things. When I first got that job, I thought, "This is gonna be so good and so healthy. It's gonna be supportive, it's gonna be loving. It's a church. What could go wrong?" Yeah, so it was the first thing I think that and I worked there for 8 years, and so it didn't take long for the first thing to come out for me, and it's a very I know you guys talk about this too. It's a very patriarchal society in the church that I was in. And I just remember, so we were divided. We had the discipleship team, and there were 3 of us on the discipleship team. So it was me as a kids min person, the youth group leader, and then the adult discipleship person. And not long after I started, the youth group leader asked for a raise because he was doing so many things, and I think it's important to say he was a he. Um, and so he was doing so many things and he got a raise. And so then the adult ministries person who was in effect, she was our boss, like, we reported to her. She was like, "You know what? I'm in charge of these people, and I do all these things," and she honestly did more than he did. And so she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go for it." So she also asked for a raise, which she was denied, and the reasoning was because and I'm pausing because I wanna vomit in my mouth, was because he had a family to support. That was the reasoning, and she was like, "So do I." She had kids. She was married. She's like, "Yeah, so do I." And just because he has the family to support doesn't negate all of the things that I do in this job and all the hours that I put in. So and she honestly and her husband also worked there. Um, and so he went in and he was like, "What? She does all these things." And so he kind of like rallied around her. And obviously he was wonderful. He's one of my best friends. But um yeah, and I don't remember if she ever got a raise because here's the second part that was, we had to sign contracts that said we were not allowed to speak about our pay, which is in effect illegal. Like, we were not allowed to speak about money and what we were being paid. I refused to sign it. The first time I did, because I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then I got smart and I was like, "No, that's wrong." So later on, like, I think it was like, I don't know, 2 years before I left, I was like, "I'm not re-signing this." And I didn't. So that was like the patriarchal part of it was pay was not equal. And we all knew because even though we weren't supposed to talk about it, we all talked about it. So that was, one of the big things. Yeah. Yeah. That was a huge thing. And then it was just, you know, the secrecy. And then there were, so many broken promises. Like, eventually I was like, "You know what? I'm not being paid what I'm worth. I put in so many hours, and so I asked to be paid what I was worth. And so instead of being like, "Yeah, you know what? We acknowledge all the amazing things that you do, blah, blah, blah. Let's do some research and see what is, the average national average for children's ministries persons." And so they did that research, but then I had to go back and do a time study of all of the things that I did and how many hours I put in on each thing. And so I was like, "Fine, I'll do that." And
So
so I
this
did
is
that.
like Pam taking notes on what Michael Scott does all day long?
Yes,
Oh my
100%.
god.
Yes, and I did that for 2 months, and so I turned it all in, and nothing happened. Nothing happened.
What?
And so then I finally said, "Listen, I jumped through all the hoops. I did all the things you told me to do. I'm doing more than I should be doing, more than what I'm getting paid for. What's going on?" And so this part was during COVID. So eventually they said, "Yep, we can give you a raise. We'll give you a raise and we'll divide it into like this chunkier raise here, and then we'll wait until September to give you the other half of your raise." And I never got the other half of the raise, and that was at the end of my time, and I finally left. But the part that really sucked about that the most was that there was a person who was like the staff liaison from, the staff and the SPRC, which was the I can't even remember what the acronym is anymore, but it was like, basically the board of directors, right? And so she kept like coming to my office and saying, "I really support you in this. I think you're deserving of this. You're so compassionate about it. I will, rally for you in our meetings, the SPRC meetings. And we're going to get this done for you." And then later, after I left the church, somebody else on that pastor parish committee came up to me and said that that person was part of the reason why I never got my raise,
Oh,
because
wow.
she kept saying she doesn't need it. She doesn't need it in the meetings. She kept saying she doesn't need it.
Oh,
Her husband's
my
working.
goodness.
She doesn't need
What?
it. Yeah. So that was like it was so toxic and hurtful. Um, so that just kind of really, like, put that little nail in the church coffin for me. Yeah, so it was just super toxic and hurtful. Um, and that's just one of the things, that I discovered after I left. But, there were all these other little things in there in those 8 years that just happened that were just kind of like, "What? What am I a part of?" I remember in the last 2 years of me being there, it got so bad that 17 of the staff members left.
Gosh, I didn't even know there'd be 17 people on staff.
Yeah, well, it was a big church, right? We had, like, over 1,000 members at the time,
Okay.
not anymore. But yeah, 17 within 2 years left, including, a couple of pastors. And those pastors are currently trying to get out of churching, to be honest. And so it was just it just got so hard and so bad, and it finally at one point, our HR was like, "Our staff is so drained, and you can tell that they're hurt, and they just have no passion for anything right now because they're so drained." So then they brought in oh my gosh, I'm just remembering all this. They brought in a psychologist, and we were each supposed to meet with the psychologist individually to just kind of, air our grievances and get everything off our chests. And then we all came back together, and this therapist did a group therapy session where the senior pastor just kind of had to sit back and listen, and they weren't allowed to say anything. They just had to listen. And we all kind of got everything off our chest, and we thought this is going to be so good. She's going to hear everything that we have to say, and we're going to start, the heal I'm using air quotes, the healing process. And we all had these high hopes, and then nothing ever happened. Like it was just a constant cycle of getting our hopes up and trying to show that we're taking care of our staff, but then nothing ever changes and nothing ever comes of it. So that I think was like
So it's like basically smoke and mirrors. They're just kind of doing things to appear like they give a shit.
yeah, 100%. 100%. Yes.
That's
But
so
yeah, that was
gross.
just yeah, it was. It was so gross. And that was they brought in so many, like it was so many incidences like that where they brought in experts to come and help us grow and get the butts in the seats. And then they never did anything, right? Like we never did anything with any of it. It was like it's the kind of like the stereotypical church thing where, we all want to change, but then nobody wants to actually do the changing. So it was just kind of like a whole series of events like that that just kind of gave me that permission to pause and to really think about, wow, is this really what I want? I don't want to follow blindly anymore. So it just kind of gave me
Yeah.
that permission to really dig in and research.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That is I wish I could say it's shocking. It's not.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not, and I hate that that's true, that it's not shocking to me or Anna. I'd love to hear how you became more aware of stuff that was going on under your nose, but you just didn't see it at the time.
That is so good. Okay, so there was this was actually right before I left. It was, and I don't know if this is answering your question, but it's just kind of like when I look back at it now, I see it differently. It was honestly Halloween, and the youth director at the time and I wanted to do like they did like a trunk or treat downtown, and the church is downtown. And so we wanted to be involved in that because we wanted to just kind of be fun, a fun place for the kids to go. So we decorated the sidewalk leading up to the church as like Candyland, and we had like an inflatable baby Yoda out, and we were just passing out candy and making it be super fun for the kids. And all of the kids and the families, like just community kids, came up and they loved it. And then a church member wrote a letter to the senior pastor at the time, basically chastising us, saying that we didn't evangelize enough, saying that we should have, it was a missed opportunity and we should have made it be like Moses, and we should all dress up as like, back in the day, the church, Jesus Moses days, right? Back in that day, we should have all had those disciple costumes on, and we should have had Moses standing in the middle of Main Street parting the seas, and it was and how magical it would have been for the kids to see Moses parting the seas for Halloween instead of us just passing out candy with the inflatable baby Yoda. And instead of, first of all, I wanted to vomit at that. I was like, "What? Why can't it just be us passing out candy for
Yeah,
funsies?"
how is that fun? And how is a kid gonna find somebody dressed up as an old ass man standing in the middle of the street, like, inspiring?
Yes, I was like, "This is so icky." And we also got in trouble for not putting our, like, church label on all of the candy. Like, we should have put a sticker on all of the candy pieces.
Oh my
Like, they were Tootsie
gosh.
Rolls, right? We were supposed to sticker all the candies so that we could, still get more butts in the pews. So it wasn't very Christ-like of us is what we were told. And instead of the pastors supporting us and coming out and saying, "You know what? It was just a fun moment for us to welcome kids of the community just to come by and say, 'Hey, we're here.'" Instead of saying that, we were kind of chastised, and we never did that again. They've never done it again. I say we, I left after that. They never did it again. And at the time, I was like, okay, yeah, they were right. It wasn't very churchy. But now looking back, I was like, what? Why couldn't it have just been about the kids instead of evangelizing and being Moses parting Main Street? What?
It's because Christians don't know how to have fun. Like, everything has to be
Yeah.
flavored with guilt, shame, conviction, you being so sinful, some God had to die for you. Like, if you think about the narrative, it's all performative. It makes me so mad that people can't just have fun. Like, you have to sully it with
Yeah.
Moses.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Moses, not a bad guy, whatever, like, I have no
Right.
beef with him, but, like, why can't you just have a Baby Yoda Halloween? Like, that's
Right.
what kids are there for, they're excited
Yeah.
about that, like, oh my gosh, I have a question,
Yeah.
this guy, I'm assuming it's a guy who is that what you said?
So this was a different youth director. My apologies. I didn't specify that. No, it was a different youth director. She was a pastor, and now she's looking to actually get out of pastoring.
Wait, is
Because
she's
she's.
the one who reported it?
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, this was just a church member. It was a lady, old lady.
Oh, okay, I was because well, if it's a lady, then there goes my theory. I was guessing it was, like, an older man
I
who was, like,
know.
an elder, and so everybody felt like they had to listen to him,
No.
the crotchety old guy, but guess not.
Yeah.
Hey, lady
No,
look
we
at
that
that,
that was
Abby, a lady
ladies.
did hold sway.
Yeah. No, it was. And in our honestly, in that church, it was the old ladies because the old ladies all of their oh my gosh, this sounds so awful, but their husbands were gone, right? So it was the old ladies that held the purse strings at the time.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That okay, there's the connection. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Like, was this person a big contributor financially?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. That's so gross. Okay, wait, so okay, you're still working there
Yeah.
during this time. How long was it
Yes.
before you actually left, like, after this Halloween thing?
It was actually maybe a couple months. It was that was Halloween, so then I left in May, and that was simply because I wanted to make sure I had a job lined up before I left, money. So, yeah, it was
Yeah.
just a couple of months.
Okay, obviously you've had a lot of drama with the church that you're involved with. You were very connected, and I wanna know, I guess, bring us up to speed. Where's Abby now? How did you get here? And what do you want out of life now? Do you still long for community? Do you have a spiritual life? I know this is a really loaded question, but we're talking about a large span of time, and we want to get to know Abby. So tell us anything that you want to about any of those things I just said.
Okay. Yeah, so community now, for me, that really just looks like surrounding myself with whomever I choose rather than feeling the need to surround myself with solely church people. I am still very good friends with two of my former coworkers. One is a former pastor at that church and one is the former music director at that church. And they are at different churches now, but they are both looking to get out of the church. I'll say business because it often is a business. So we talk all the time, every day. And that's awesome. It's a safe space. I feel comfortable sharing, where I'm at with them. And they still do identify as Christians. They just know that the the church business world is a toxic place. And so they're looking to get out for their own mental health. Um, so yeah, I do surround myself now. I have the freedom to surround myself with whoever I want, which is amazing. And yeah, like spiritually now, I have given myself permission to, like I said, do all the research and read all the books, but also just to kind of experiment and do different things. Like now I find spirituality in everything else, right? Like, I find it in just going outside and taking the dog potty in my bare feet and touching the grass with my bare feet and, grounding myself that way
Mhm.
or, lay this sounds so weird, laying in the driveway and just playing with my cats. Like, that's where I find, a sense of peace. And it's just, kinda snuggling with my animals. Oh my word, I sound so lame, but that's honestly where it is for me. It's just finding little moments of peace. I guess that is my spirituality, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It just looks different now.
I love that. I don't think it's lame at all. Because I feel like in Christianity, they over spiritualize everything. I mean, I'm talking about myself too when I was in it. I over spiritualized everything. You couldn't do anything that was just do it because you want to do it. You have to do it unto the Lord, no matter what it is.
Yes.
So I love that you find just such simplicity and beauty in everyday things because honestly, I feel the same, similarly. I also will find random little moments that kinda sneak up on me, and something about it feels deeper than what it actually is. And it's like, "Okay, that. If there is a God, then that's her right there. I am experiencing her in that moment." I just think it's not lame at all.
Yeah, I think
You're so
there's a
nice.
beauty in a it is true. It's beauty's everywhere if you're looking for, I mean, relatively speaking, I guess. But yeah, I think the same thing. Like I think you can find so much. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why we start going to church in the first place is because we have these experiences that put us in awe and amazement. And we wanted to have that same thing with other people. And then you find out that especially when you start monetizing anything, it changes it, and church changed when people started getting paid to do it, and so I think there's a lot of challenges within that it makes it harder to really experience that awe and amazement with other people because now you're just working a machine. So I think it's awesome that you're finding beauty outside of that and a lot of peace, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think you're so right when we bring it into, like, that monetizing part of it, it changes it changes everything. I think you're absolutely right there.
That's part of the reason why we did home church our whole lives, because we just if we had tithe or money that anybody that wanted to give, then we gave it to the person that needed it, and then we just moved on. Nobody got paid to do anything, you know? And that was a huge motivation for not being a part of traditional church. But, I'm not saying all churches are evil because they collect a tithe or whatever, but it is challenging to navigate that fine line between doing it for money and doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the peace that you're finding now in life is you said that you surround yourself with people you love and that and you're just finding spirituality and just everyday things, and all that is really beautiful. So I would like to know, how would you want your story to inspire other people?
That is a very good question. Um, Honestly, I think I just want people to feel comfortable being their authentic selves and giving yourself that permission to just be you in whatever form that looks like, rather than having to feel like you have to fit into this mold that the church sets forth, right? Like, rather than always having to feel
Mhm,
like being the good Christian girl, I can just be nice and I can just be a good person without having all of
mhm,
that baggage to carry at the same time. Um,
mhm,
just to be your authentic self. And I know Kari Jo and I have talked about this a lot.
Mhm.
Family wise, is just it's okay to be you without anything else persuading you to be other things.
expectations, that was a big one for me. Like, what do people expect, you know? So, like, don't listen to that. Like, listen to your heart and do
Yes.
what you've being authentic is a step towards understanding what life means to you. Being authentic is where people are gonna really find, inspiration. Like, I had the question, how do you wanna inspire others? Like, be authentic,
Yeah,
just be
Abby,
yourself.
that
Yeah,
brings me to a question too.
absolutely.
Like in your busting out of the mold, what have you learned about yourself that has been surprising?
Honestly, I like myself so much more. I feel like I am way stronger than I ever thought I was.
Mm,
I feel like I'm really freaking fierce
Yes, you are.
now. Yeah, and I feel more confident, honestly. Like, I just feel like so much more me than I ever knew that I
Mhm.
was, if that makes sense. Yeah, like, before I was very unsure of myself, and now I'm like, "This is me," and I'm giving myself permission to be me,
mhm,
finally. I mean, I'm freaking 45. How long did
mhm.
this take me?
Yeah, I relate to that extremely well. That's been my experience too. And I think it makes it difficult to navigate relationships that knew you very well when you were in the Christian bubble, and they're kind of standing by watching you as you gracefully or not so gracefully exit that bubble. So, I always like to hear how people navigate that, if you have any suggestions for other people who are navigating that. Yeah, give us a little insight into what that looks like for you and what you found helpful.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, it's just having that open conversation for me. My husband still Christian and he goes to church every Sunday. And so for us, it's just having that open and honest conversation and him knowing where I'm at and knowing that this is what I believe. And I support him and his beliefs and he supports me and where I'm at now. So honestly, just having that honest conversation has been the hugest piece for me.
I think that's really helpful, and I'm glad you touched on that actually, because I did wanna ask, like, how are you and your husband navigating that? Because, like, I'm similar to you. Stephen would identify as, like, following the teachings of Christ, but he's not going to church every Sunday. But, we're very different camps of belief, for sure. And we've made it work, and you've made it work. And so I think it's important for our listeners to hear that it is possible. Like one of you in the marriage can exit the faith and the other one can stay firmly in it. But like you said, I think that's great advice is just be willing. You both have to be willing to have the open and honest conversations because if not, then you're just pretending and there is no authenticity anymore. So
Yeah.
the open mutual respect and communication for me as well has been key, not just for my husband, but for other people like my parents, friends that I had in the church, like just being willing to share honestly with them. That's all we can do. That's all we have control over is how we share, how openly, how honestly, and then however it lands with them, that's on them. And we can just kind of walk away from that knowing that we did our best. We did our
Right.
part.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really good point too, Carrie Jo, when you said, that it's okay for one person in the relationship to still go to church, be a Christian, and one person to walk away. Because I think, at least for me, growing up, it was always find a find a Christian boy, right? Like it was
Yeah,
always you had it was both, right? It wasn't either or. It always had to be both. And so now I know that it's fine that I can have my own beliefs and he can have his, and we can still be, shocking, a married couple, like having
right.
different beliefs, right?
Is there anything about your experience or your journey, Abby, that you haven't shared that we hadn't specifically touched on with questions that you would like to share with us and our listeners?
Honestly, like, for me, I mean, there are some, like, resources that I've really and still do really enjoy, like, listening to, and I know you guys have talked about him before, but Dan McClellan on TikTok, he, for me, has been a super source of, like, information, and then the other one, is I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but Archbishop Jonathan Blake, I believe is his name. He's an archbishop, like I said, and he honestly was a really good resource for me bridging that gap between trying to reconcile my faith with who I was morphing into and just revamping the way that Christians view the Bible and certain scriptures and what Jesus was really trying to say rather than our watered down white people version of the Bible.
Mm.
So he honestly has been so good. He's got some books out and everything. But yeah, he's on TikTok too, deconstructing everything. It just made me feel better about my thought process. So yeah, he was a really great resource for me.
Jonathan Blake?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll
cool.
put some links in the show notes to those. No, I love that you shared some of your favorite resources because I think, I look back on my experience and I wasn't really openly deconstructing with anybody except Steven. Like, and that even took a while before I could even articulate what the hell was happening to me. And so I just kind of stumbled upon podcasts. And by listening to podcasts, they would talk about a book and then I would get the book. And like, it was just kind of a chain reaction. And that's great. Like that does work. But I feel like a lot of people, it would go maybe more smoothly for them in their transition if they had access to resources. So that's something we like to provide. So I'm really glad that you brought that up because that was not on my list of things to ask you.
Abby, it's been really nice hearing your story and getting to know you a little bit better. I feel like we could probably do another podcast to go a little bit deeper, and maybe even you could join us with another interview one day. That'd be kind of fun. But today, we just want to thank you for joining us and giving us your story and being vulnerable and so honest and authentic and being a good example of what that looks like post everything. So thanks, Abby. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Like I said earlier, I was super nervous, but super excited at the same time to share my story. So thank you for giving
Yeah,
me the safe space. Really, it was a great safe
of
space to share.
course.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course.
It was our pleasure. Well, we'll let you get on with your day, and Anna and I will pump your tires behind your back. So, yeah, anyway, thanks
Awesome.
again, and
Thank you.
we'll talk very soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, see ya. That was super fun.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Man, she has just been a trooper. She has such a good attitude about, just she seems so happy and at peace and just
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah.
Not to say that those challenges she went through were difficult or even life altering,
Right.
but she's just rolled with it. And I think that's such a cool thing about her. I think I can tell why you guys get along so well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been so fun to develop a deeper friendship with her because, like, as sister-in-laws, like, sure, you have stuff in common automatically, but as I was becoming more open and public about my journey, I'll never forget this. I was in the throes of pulling everything apart, and we were at their house, sitting out back in their yard, and I had a medallion of the goddess Kuan Yin on it, and I had that in my pocket, and for me at that time, that was a very powerful reminder of the divine feminine, and it was just something, like, I was really grappling with and trying to make sense of. I was still trying to hang on to some more profound sense of spirituality at that time, and I was sharing that with her, like, we were just kind of over in the corner a little bit, like, we weren't surrounded by a lot of people, and I shared that with her, and I'll never forget, she probably doesn't even remember this conversation, but for me, it was like a huge, like, spotlight on acceptance because she was like, "That is so cool," and I was sharing with her about, like, what I'm currently wrestling with, the whole thing, and she basically said, "Yeah, I've been in that place for a while," and she
Mm,
had already, like, come to some conclusions that I had not gotten there yet, and I just remember thinking, "Man, that was such a safe space for me," when at the time I didn't feel safe because I didn't even know what was happening to me, you know?
mhm.
But she was basically, like, identifying with my journey, and also at the same time, like, she was probably, like, totally done with deities, but at the same time, I'm sharing with her about this feminine deity that I'm really relating to, and she was so
Mhm.
supportive of that, and I was like, "My gosh." That just was shocking to me, not because shocking to be from her, but just shocking that somebody could be that supportive of kind of a far out there concept that I was, like, dabbling in.
Right.
And so, yeah, like, since then, I was like, "Oh, we have more things we need to talk about."
Absolutely.
So we have just slowly, week by week, we're sharing a little bit here and there on voice messages on Instagram, and it's been so great to, like, really get to know her.
That's so cool you have somebody like that you can connect with like that in your family.
Agreed. Because there's
Mm.
something different about somebody within the family, that you can relate to and share openly with instead of just a friend on the outside. It's somebody within the dynamic of family is just it's just a different experience, and I'm so grateful for her. She's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to meet somebody in your family today too.
Yeah, I know. It's
Mhm.
fun to connect the dots because I talk about you
Mhm.
too with her, like
Right.
she knows you kind of from the episodes that she listens to, but it's cool that, like, you guys can kinda get to know each other a little bit more.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
Cool.
girl, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. You do your thing.
Peace out, friends.
Oh my gosh. I'm never gonna sing mine. I will never. That's never gonna happen. I will gladly say, though, "Peace out."
Awesome.
Hey, if you made it this far, damn, you're a rock star. Thank you so much for listening to us, and let us know who you are. We wanna hear from your sweet little face. Check back in for the next episode to experience more hippie nonsense, talk more heresy, and share more laughs.